Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our December lecture. I'm Angie Bernardi, and I have the honor of being the president of the Women's Society of Washington University. And just to let you know who we are, in case you haven't heard, we were created to bring the community to the university, so we're especially glad to see you here today. Thank you for taking time to join us in person and also our live stream. For almost 60 years, the Women's Society has supported academic and leadership opportunity for our WashU students. We're a group of volunteers of all ages and backgrounds who are interested in supporting the university. Our members are proud to support our students by funding 2 full tuition scholarships for students who transfer to WashU from our St. Louis Community College. In addition to the scholarships, the Women's Society funds student projects, leadership awards, and member events, including this lecture series featuring our prominent faculty. The Women's Society also, this is the commercial, oversees the Bare Necessities shop, which is located in the Umrath House. It features WashU logo items that you can't find anywhere else on campus, and all the proceeds support our scholarships. And so please shop there if you're in need of some WashU merchandise. Many of you are members of our Women's Society, but for those of you who aren't, I don't want to miss this opportunity to invite you to join us. Our members are dedicated to enriching the lives of students and supporting one another so that Washington University is not only in St. Louis, but also for St. Louis. We have a form available at the registration table, so please stop by and see our Aaron, Blair, or Judy, and they'll be happy to update your information. And now I would like to welcome our speaker, Mimi Calter. She is Vice Provost and University Librarian for Washington University, where she oversees the Washington University Library's expert staff of 140 librarians, curators, archivists, and technologists. She supports the development of programming and collections in support of research, teaching, and learning, drives strategic priorities, and advocates for library programs both locally and globally. Prior to joining WashU, Mimi served as Deputy University Librarian at Stanford University, where she helped expand digital technologies and repositories and managed multiple capital projects. She also spent time as a knowledge manager at Goldman Sachs, where she provided research support to a bi-coastal team in investment banking. Mimi earned her undergraduate degree in English from the University of Pennsylvania and a graduate degree in graduate degree in Business Administration and Library and Information Science from Drexel University. She's also an avid birder, and when not in the library, will often be seen looking skyward. Please welcome me in joining Mimi Calter. I just want you to know I took all of her notes right off the podium, so I'm going to take my commercial away and let her speak. Thank you. And I apologize, Mimi. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. I definitely need my notes. Okay, so good morning. Thank you all for being here today, and thanks to those of you who are joining online. I am very excited to be presenting to the Women's Society. I have heard very good things about the group, and I look forward to a lively discussion in the Q&A, which I will leave plenty of time for. I'd forgotten I'd thrown the bird watching thing into my bio, so we can have Q&A questions about bird watching as well. I will say one of the things that I've done since joining WashU is I've been working as a faculty advisor to the WashU Bird Club that is mostly student run, and that's really been a really exciting thing to be doing outside of the library. Okay, so as the university librarian, not surprisingly, I am going to talk today about libraries. I'm going to start at a fairly high level, look at what libraries are, how they're defined, talk a little bit about the stereotypes, and then some of the value systems that are associated with libraries. Hopefully, in the process, prove to you my premise that the library of the future is already here. Then I'm going to zoom in a little bit and talk specifically about WashU libraries, what we're doing now, our sort of future-focused programs, what our priorities for the future are, And then I do want to zoom back out and talk about some of the challenges to libraries in the community today. I've already had a couple of conversations with some of you about concerns there, and I think it's an important topic that we talk more broadly about how libraries are being, the challenges that libraries are facing today. But I'm going to start with mission statements. I've said that I've heard good things about this group, and I have, but when I was first approached about the talk, I was not familiar with the Women's Society. I have since joined. Thank you for the advertisement. But when I was first approached, I really didn't know the Women's Society, and I had to study a little bit, and I took a look at of course, at the mission statement for the group, which talks about building mutual understanding and enhancing interaction between Washington University and the St. Louis community. I think it's an important mission. I do think it is critical that the university is a part of the surrounding community and that the university and the community grow together. But as I thought about that mission, I saw some really nice parallels between this group's mission statement and the mission statement that we have for the library, which I will read, is facilitating the discovery, creation, utilization, preservation, and dissemination of ideas while serving as an interactive hub of information resources, expertise, services, and relationships. So the library statement is a good bit wordier. I congratulate the Women's Society on conciseness there. But what strikes me is that both mission statements are about connection. They're about interaction. They're about building understanding, and that's really where we see our critical role. So I'm hoping that today's presentation will help support both those mission statements, that will build some connections with each other, and then hopefully be able to take those connections out into the community. Another source of inspiration and really a little bit of context for my talk today came from a presentation I attended by Marcia McNutt, who's the president of the National Academy of Sciences, and being from the National Academy of Sciences, took a sort of scientific spin, a biological approach to her presentation on the future of universities. She was looking at sort of academia writ large. And she used a biological metaphor. If you aren't evolving, you're dying. It's a little bit stark, but there's some truth to it, and I think it is a nice context for thinking about universities. As I think about the library, there are some clear parallels and similarities between the library of 100 years ago and today's library, that you can say the same thing about universities. But there are also a lot of these evolutionary pressures, as Marcia had termed them, the sort of changes in technology, certainly cultural changes. COVID brought some very quick cultural changes and even changes in the way we think about the financial approaches to universities and to libraries. So we're sort of emerging from a period of stasis where our evolution has been limited, and we're starting to see much quicker evolution in both libraries and universities. I certainly am seeing clear examples of this here at WashU. I've been a part of the community for a little over a year now, and in just that short time, I've seen the university move to needs-blind admission. I've seen the admission of the most diverse class of undergraduates ever. I joined at just about the same time as the new dean for University College, and it's been great to see the ways that University College is thinking about its approach to interacting with the community and the ways that the community interacts with the school. And of course, so a lot of those changes are part of this much bigger Here and Next strategic plan that the university has launched. And there's a lot of evolutionary change that is packaged up into that whole process. So very excited to have been a part of some of that planning, and very pleased to see that Washington University is indeed responding to these evolutionary pressures and moving forward. So that's going to be my reason number one, that the Library of the Future is already here. It's because we are an evolving organization and an evolving organism, and universities are evolving, the libraries are evolving right along with them. So I'm talking about libraries evolving, but that raised the question for me of, well, then what is the library? I mean, things are changing, things are evolving. What is that core piece that makes a library a library? How do we think about it? And I looked around to a couple of different places for definitions. This one came from the American Library Association, and I like it because, much like our library mission statement, it's about community and collaboration. Really, in this definition, libraries are changing in dynamic places, but the focus is on the people. It's about librarians helping people to find the best source of information. It's about that connection between people and information. And the library is a hub in this model, much like we say in our own mission statement. So this made me feel good about us being having that core focus of what the library is. Another definition I liked and that I really wanted to share with you all came from a publication that came out from my former employer, Stanford. And I happen to have a copy of this publication, Who Needs a Library Anyway?, which seemed to fit into today's discussion. This was published at the opening of a renovation of a library, but it's such a nice statement about what the library is. A library is a safe place for ideas, even outrageous or heretical ones, to be stored and protected for constant reuse and for the refreshment of the individual and collective intellect. The library is a kind of celebration of the ideas of mankind. So also that focus on ideas and that focus on connection. This definition is a little more abstract, but I really do think it does a nice job of getting at that ethos of what the library is and sort of thinking about that core. It's ideas, it's the protection of ideas, it's the reuse of ideas, and it's bringing people together and connecting people with ideas. And I do think this also fits well with the Washington University Library's mission statement about facilitating discovery, creation, utilization, preservation, and dissemination of ideas. A lot of verbs there, but really coming back to ideas. Okay, so that is a nice idea, that's an interesting idea of libraries, and libraries are these memory institutions that have this long and storied history. What that means is that there are a lot of stereotypes and preconceptions out there about libraries. For all of our evolutionary activity, these sort of preconceptions and stereotypes often drive the way that libraries are sort of understood and perceived. This is definitely a concern for me as I advocate for the libraries, as I am positioning the libraries and talking about our role with faculty as part of an evolving organization. I do want to think about how we get past those priorities and make clear the evolution that is going on within our organization. In particular, a particular challenge for libraries is the semantic question, because there are multiple meanings of the term library, and this was part of the reason I was looking back at those definitions, is you can get caught up in the term library. It can, and often does, refer to a building. It's often a magnificent building, a really, fabulous and historied building like the one that is seen here. It is often a comfortable and very well-loved building like our own Olin Library, which is one of the most popular places for students to come and study, particularly undergraduates to come and study and engage in a variety of intellectual pursuits, but still a building and very solid and unchanging and definitely not evolving. The word library semantically can also refer specifically to a collection, and there is a tendency when that library word is used for people to think specifically of printed books, and printed books are indeed an important piece of the work that we do, but they're far from the only work that we do. So part of my mission here is to expand people's understanding of what a library is. I like those definitions that we talked about before because they are about connection, because they're about community, and I really do want to do everything I can to make sure that people understand the spectrum of services that libraries provide and how much more that is than just keeping the books dry and having a nice space to study. I will say that those stereotypes are certainly not how librarians see ourselves. I like to use the iceberg metaphor in relation to library buildings. Library buildings are the piece that of the organization that you can see. They are there. They have an important place on the campus, but there's so much more beneath the surface. And this list of library competencies, which again comes from the American Library Association, and is actually a few years old, just kind of gives a flavor of the kinds of expertise, the kinds of services that libraries and librarians feel take on the professional responsibility for managing and working through. The organization of recorded knowledge and information is a huge, huge area of activity, and is something that ties into a lot of the other work that we have going on here on campus. We all have seen the importance of data and data resources in the work that we're doing. There's a lot of management and organization of that knowledge. There's the integration of technology into all of the work we do. So librarians certainly see themselves having a place and an important role in the engagement in working with all of this creation of new knowledge and its management on campus. And there's so much about these. So much about the competencies that don't fit into the building. The library is more than a building. Our collections are moving to digital. The collections are certainly in terms of budget, the largest piece of what we are acquiring. Data management and curation, which I'll get to later, is probably the fastest growing piece of our work. We've moved a lot of reference services online, so we do a lot of reference now by chat that's available 24/7. We participate in a community of libraries that work to support that kind of chat reference service. So there's so much that is outside of the building and in place and is tied to that building community and connection that we're moving beyond. So there's my reason number 2, that the library of the future is already here. The libraries are bigger than the buildings. But now I try to have it both ways and say that while the libraries are bigger than buildings, the buildings are still a critical piece of what we do. While 2 slides ago I was chafing at stereotypes, there is much about the tradition of librarianship that I do embrace. So I do want library buildings to be celebrated, even if they are only the tip of the iceberg. I want library collections to be celebrated, even as they are changing formats and we're acquiring data and we're acquiring more and more special collections. And as we have to find new ways to preserve and to organize them. But most critically, I want the tradition of library values to be celebrated. I am quite confident that the reason that those library stereotypes that I was talking about are so persistent is because of their strong association with traditional library values. The reason that so many of us have these fond recollections of libraries as places that we felt safe, as libraries as places that we were able to grow, is because libraries and librarians have espoused and vocalized and fought for these values. This came from another list from the American Library Association. I referred back to them a lot for this talk. That we have provided and have been so clear about the value that we place on confidentiality, on privacy, on intellectual freedom and the freedom to explore and to read widely and broadly and really be exposed to different ideas, even heretical ones from my early definition of a library, and to be able to question and explore, to act as a public good, providing a public service that is open and accessible, and to value diversity in all kinds of formats of the way we think about the collection, in the people who are part of the libraries. So I think this is my real, reason number 3 is my real focus for why the Library of the Future is already here, is because library values are very future focused, and that grounding in library values is really what ensures that libraries are going to continue and move forward. So a little bit about WashU. I've talked about the Library of the Future. I've talked about it as a central hub, about organizing and curating information, about the library being a safe place for ideas and for imagination and exploration, about building community, and certainly about its value system. I want to talk a little bit about, sort of use WashU as a case study and talk a little bit about how those values and certainly those competencies get put forward in practice, and sort of what some of the services are that we have on the table now that make us a future focused library. This is by no means, I'm going to run through some pieces of expertise. This is by no means a complete list of library services, and if there's anything you feel like I'm missing here, I'd love to talk more, but let me sort of talk about who we are and what we're doing. I think it is really important to start with people. We have almost 30 subject librarians and curators in the library who are sort of, when you sort of talk about academic librarians, these are the people that you tend to think of. The subject specialist librarians have responsibilities for maintaining connections to their departments. Many of them have some kind of qualification in their department, so and have expertise that they bring to bear on the work that they're doing. They are doing things like one-on-one research consultations. They're visiting classes and providing instruction. They're building out research guides, and they're assisting with course reserves. And of course, they are also curating collections in their individual subject areas. The curators in special collections are collaborating with the subject specialists to ensure that students have access to and are engaged with and discovering the kind of primary source material that we have in special collections. And we really do work hard to break down those barriers between general and special collections and ensure that students have access to those kinds of materials. We spend a lot of time on instruction and information literacy. Our instruction librarians collaborate with faculty on design of research assignments. They teach instruction sessions. There's a little bit, you'll see a little bit of overlap here with the subject specialists, but we do have a focus on information literacy. We do resource evaluation. We do work to embed information literacy sessions into other instruction and build things into the learning management system. A growing area of activity, this is a small but mighty group right now, but is our scholarly communications team. This group helps students, faculty, and staff with all manner of copyright issues. They offer individual consultations and workshops. As we talk about some of the library values around privacy, around intellectual freedom, the work of our scholarly communications team is one of the places that you really start to see those values in action. I work directly with folks in our scholarly communication team when we are reviewing library contracts to think about how the privacy questions that we are wrestling with get implemented into and work with the systems, the third-party systems that we are contracting to use. We're doing a lot of consultation on issues around open access and open research, and how our faculty can build in access to the results of their research to the results of their research into our library systems, so that we can make them available, and so that they can actually manage the rights that they have to reuse and make accessible all of that data, and certainly those publications. So this is a big and growing area of activity for us. Data services is definitely fast growing. And this group, and I think, really it shows the future-focused nature of our services. We do work in data curation and sharing. This involves building persistent IDs, metadata work, archiving of data, either in a library-sponsored repository or supporting faculty in depositing material into an external repository. We do work in data analysis and visualization. We do research data management, which ties back to data curation and sharing, but research data management involves coordinating with faculty, particularly in the grant writing process, to ensure that they have data management plans, and then we can help them in executing those data management plans. And we do also data literacy instruction, which ties very, very much to the information literacy instruction that we talked about with the more traditional kinds of resources. And I do want to mention collections because the collections slide is a little less people-focused, but I do think it is so central to what we do, and that idea of collecting ideas, many of those ideas are bound up in our collections. Our collections are definitely evolving. We are being very thoughtful about the diversity of our collections and what we are collecting and how we are representing the community that we serve in the materials that we bring in the ways that we classify those materials, in the terminology that we use in all of our cataloging. We are, of course, thinking about both digital and physical materials. Certainly as we did so much more remote work during COVID, we are thinking about how digital materials fit into those collections, and how we are preserving and archiving digital materials that we're bringing in. We are having some interesting conversations right now in the special collections area about thinking about digital archiving and how you think about the definition of a first draft in a digital archive of material. We have some processes laid out for handling paper material, and how do we translate those into the digital realm. So we are becoming more digital and more interactive in the way we think about collections, even as we continue to focus on special collections, and as we still continue to value the important print collections that we do have. I don't have a slide about spaces, but I do just want I've mentioned library spaces a few times, and that is an important service that we provide, is just access to our spaces. This is particularly important for undergraduates, but it does kind of run the gamut. And it is something that is clearly in demand. So keeping our spaces active, having them be a place for people to come together and engage, places that we can have events, that we can have exhibits, that we can provide the kind of community building services that we are so focused on in some of those other areas, is really important. So that's what that's a nice summary of the kinds of things that we are doing now. Because the Washington University libraries are indeed evolving and not dying, what does that mean about the ways we're looking forward? We've just recently published on our website our strategic priorities for the next few years. This map has come out of my conversations with faculty over my first year here, and the listening tour work that I did, listening not only to faculty but to our own library staff, and also comes out of some of the conversations that I was involved with in planning for Here and Next and the university's strategic plan. I really want to make sure that the library's strategic priorities are well aligned with the work that's happening under the strategic plan. So we have 3 guiding principles that are sort of infused through that provide a lens that are sort of infused through the work that we are looking to do. Most important on this list is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We really, and that is very much in line with what the university is doing in its own in its own strategic plan, we want to take a DEI lens and focus on our activities in all of these different areas. We also are focusing on academic distinction that, again, is coming from the university, and is something that I've heard the chancellor certainly talk about in so much of what is happening at the university level. And also that research focus of thinking, of looking at the ways that we are very much a research arm. The libraries are the laboratory for the humanities. The libraries are very much engaged in the support for research, and so providing that, having that focus as we move forward with these other areas. But we've got 3 strategic priority areas for the next several years. Infrastructure, which has both physical and digital components. I know some of you saw the piece in today's Student Life that talked about libraries and some of the storage challenges that the libraries are facing. So physical infrastructure is very much a piece of the path that we see going forward, and an area that we are going to need to focus. Similarly, digital infrastructure has, we have some places where we know that we have problems and some gaps that we need to fill. But we also see some real opportunities as we look at the digital transformation work that is happening as part of Here and Next, and how we coordinate the library, let the library be a front door into a lot of the digital services that the university is moving out and putting forward, and particularly around data, as we think about how we build out our data repository, how we provide services to support the use of data in a wide variety of research arenas. That's a big piece for us. Okay, collections. Collections are that core of ideas. They're always going to be a piece of what libraries do, but we are thinking about how we ensure that collections are aligned with research. As the university is thinking about expanding its areas of research and places where new work is happening. We know that under Here and Next, we're looking at a new School of Public Health. We also know that there's a new program being built out in environment and environmental sciences. That's going to change the way we think about our collections and the way we collect. Part of my role is to ensure that as the university is making these plans, that we're sure that we are giving appropriate thought to the impact, the implications for the library of expanding into these areas, and then just thinking about what the appropriate collections are to support those needs. And really, what can we do with those collections to thinking about things, again, like the diversity of our collections, the way that those collections can serve the broadest possible community is an important piece of what we're doing. And then collaboration. It is really important that the libraries are a collaborative and connecting resource that comes through in all of these definitions and missions that I've talked about. So we're having a lot of internal conversations about our library sort of organizational culture and the way that we work. I see the libraries, it is a goal for me to ensure that the libraries have increased engagement on campus and are seen as that front door into services and a place to connect people from across different departments, then really taking advantage of the role that the library has as a center that is not affiliated with a particular school or department or subject area, and be able to build that interdisciplinarity and bring it and connect people from across different parts of the university and across schools and across departments. And then external, I think it is important that we are part of a broader community of libraries. I've talked a lot about the potential to be much more engaged in things like collaborative collection development. This ties back to the storage question, because having the capacity to store materials as we build collaborative collections is very important. But thinking about us being part of partnerships where we think about what we are collecting at WashU, how that pairs with what our partners at Mizzou or other, or SLU or the local schools are collecting, and how we can share those resources appropriately so that we can that we don't have to have everybody collecting everything, but we need to think about how we can access all of these different subject areas. So, external collaboration. So that's the kind of that's the way we're thinking on our path forward with the libraries. I'm going to now zoom completely out, from the WashU focused look that I was taking there and just talk a little bit about the challenges that libraries are facing in the community. This is a random selection of headlines about the movement that we have seen recently to ban books, about the unprecedented efforts to ban books, particularly those with the particular gender themes. There's a particular attention to the way the books are accessed by young people, young adults and children. We've been a little bit lucky here in the university particularly because the focus has been on young adults and children's access to materials. They're not our primary audience, although we do have some certainly young adults who are making use of library facilities. We've been a little bit distanced from this, but it is really problematic and concerning for me that those traditional library values of access to information, of freedom of research, of intellectual freedom, and certainly privacy and thinking about what kinds of materials one wants to have access to are being challenged in this way. In particular, for us here in Missouri, I want to make sure that everybody knows that there is a piece of rulemaking on the books that came from the Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, which is designed to limit it's being called a book ban proposal in a number of different areas. What it actually does is require public libraries and libraries who are receiving state funding to produce some fairly detailed collection development and access plans, with the threat of being cut off from funding if this fairly detailed work is not undertaken. I want to be careful and make sure I say, because the Washington University has not formally taken a position in regard to the proposal, but the Missouri Library Association has, and so I encourage you to take a look at the Missouri Library Association's website. I've got a quote there from their statement on the Secretary of State's proposed rule. I encourage you to respond. We've got about a week left in the comment period for this piece of rulemaking, and if you have not sent a letter, I encourage you personally, not on behalf of the university, to do so, because I find it really concerning that we are taking this step here in Missouri. So I'm going to stop there and turn to the group and see what kind of questions we might have and what else you all wanted to talk about. Okay. Do we want to are we going to hand out microphones? Okay, good. She's got a microphone. I just want to make sure that the folks who are online can hear the questions.
Thank you so much. This is amazing. I wanted to ask about why WashU has not taken a stand on something that seems so clear and so closely related to our mission as an educational institution. And I'm just wondering, are they aware? So did Julie Florid, is this something that they've discussed and they decided not to take a stand, or has it? I'm just a little floored that this seems like something so close.
That the university has not put out an official position. It is less that it was discussed and we decided not to, as it. I was involved in a little bit of discussion around this. The issue is that we are not the ones who are most directly affected by the rule. While it is concerning, it is not our funding that is at risk. So so it was a little bit challenging for to think about what kind of statement went out. I am not the only one who is pointing everybody to the Missouri Library Association's opinion, though, because I think in the conversations that I've been involved with on campus have all been in support of on the Missouri Library Association's side of this concern. But the biggest issue has been that it's not our funding that's being impacted.
Right, but WashU makes a lot of statements about things that we do not directly change, right? A lot of diversity statements regarding areas that we don't have control over. I'll say I'm just disappointed in our organization not to come out in favor of such a really mission central.
Right. Yes, not to express more vocally the opposition. There is a lot of opposition, I know, amongst the faculty and in a number of places, but yes, that's...
Speaking of public funding, what public funding would you get or would libraries get from the state of Missouri? It's notoriously against any kind of funding for education, libraries, or anything else.
Yes, but there is state funding. There is some state funding, and I don't have the document in front of me. There are specific statutory references in that piece of rulemaking as to which funding would be challenged if libraries failed to meet the requirements that Secretary Ashcroft is putting forward. I will confess I've not done my research. I don't know the amount of funding that is covered under those resources, and it is an interesting question, right? How much of an impact would it have?
Washington U is the bright spot of intellectual pursuit in the state of Missouri.
Yes.
You have a responsibility here.
The comment for those online was that the Washington University does is a bright spot for intellectual pursuit and intellectual freedom, and so it is. Yes, that thought of how we engage is an important thing for us to take on. There's another question.
Years ago, when I was working, there was a phrase, peer-reviewed and authoritative.
Yes.
And that sort of implied search engines and that libraries would sort of guide students toward those.
Towards peer-reviewed and authoritative.
Right. And I just wondered if that was still the case, or, I mean, in those days, 20 years ago, it was more no Wikipedia.
Yes, I understand what it is you're talking about. There's still an aspect of that out there. I think publication is changing, and the ways that research results are put out is changing. I think there's growing acceptance of, and you're seeing more and more things. You're seeing more and more online publications, fully online publications. That and sort of non-traditional journals out there. One of the things that an area that I've been particularly involved in is the concept of library publishing, which and we do this. We support the publication of open access monographs. We have a technological platform that will support folks in looking to put out monographs. Peer review is still important, and peer review is still an important piece of the way that these materials are thought about. And there are definitely non-traditional journals and other kinds of publications that do build in peer review into the process. It's always a question of how peer review is built into there. So peer review continues to be the gold standard and for research publications, and it's a place that we direct people. There are valid and well-considered sources out there that are not peer-reviewed sources, but there is also a sort of growing there's also this growing, I talked a lot about information literacy. There's this growing cadre of disinformation and challenging information that, sort of disinformation that is out there on the internet. And so that is one of the things that we focus on in thinking about information literacy, is really assessing sources. It doesn't necessarily have to be a peer-reviewed source to be valid, but it does have to have some, you do have to be thoughtful about what kind of sources you're using. So yes, there is still a lot of conversation there. Wikipedia has actually gained a certain amount of credibility as a particular resource. They have gone out of their way to ensure that they are citing and referencing, which doesn't mean it doesn't have its challenges, but Wikipedia has certainly become more accepted as a resource, in spite of there is a certain amount of peer review built in to having such a large group of editors working there, and in fact, there's a couple of different programs built into libraries and a number of different organizations, library-related organizations, to have libraries engaged with helping to build some of the content on Wikipedia. I was involved with a really interesting one that was working to increase the representation of women artists in the sort of, in the artwork, increase the diversity of the kinds of things that are covered on Wikipedia, and ensuring that women artists got appropriate representation was one particular focus. There's a lot of similar programs like that out there that are working in those ways. There's a question in the back. The microphone is coming.
You had mentioned special collections. Can you give a few examples of some of the most interesting and obscure ones at the university?
Oh, you're going to quiz me on the obscure ones, and I'm not going to do as well as I would like. I mean, you have heard that we have the copy of the Declaration of Independence. That was something that really got built into the renovation of Olin more recently. We've got that on a regular display. That's a place that we are still growing and expanding. In fact, it is not publicly announced, but I think we're going to have a second copy of the Declaration of Independence that we're going to be able to display along that will be on loan. It won't be part of our collections, but we're working on a loan agreement for a second copy of the Declaration of Independence, and as we come up on a sort of anniversary year, we're looking forward to building some programming around that. I've been impressed to learn about the strength of our collections in German and German studies. I did not know that coming in, and I like to think about that German and German studies is a place where we have a really good melding of the general and special collections. It's a place where we are acquiring pretty broadly, and we have some really strong collections there. One thing that coming out of special collections that I love and is just kind of a delight is the Edison collection of miniatures. We have a whole collection of miniature books, and we have a sort of rotating set of exhibits on miniatures that I encourage you to come to Olin Library and see. But they've proved fascinating to me. They're just it's a delight of a collection, and not in any particular subject area, but just just very, very, some of them are older, some of them are really new. And we have some really fascinating newer publications in book arts, so things that stretch the definition of book, we had one that we were exhibiting recently to some college, which was, and I should prepare better because I should know who the artist was, but this is sort of an egg-shaped book that had, for the cover, that you could pull sort of threads of text out of, which was really kind of fascinating. So we've got a lot and I'm not doing justice to our special collections in describing the materials that are there. But if there is a particular interest or subject area, I would love to hear about it. And I do want to check, do we have anything, I see that there's a couple of comments online. Is there anything online I should be responding to?
Yeah, we have a question from somebody online, and it's about digital material.
Okay.
So they said publishers have a tight hold on libraries' access to digital material. It's not the same as somebody, say, buying a book on Amazon. And that the digital collection is an expensive piece of libraries' operating costs. Is WashU working with other libraries to attempt to manage these costs? And then also, is it the same for published research in the digital realm?
So yes, digital materials, as we are moving more digital, it does mean we have to think differently about what our collections are. So when I talk about that idea of collaborative collection development and thinking of partnering with other libraries, thinking about what the role is of digital materials, whether it's books or journals, is definitely an important piece of the discussion, because there are very different ways that one accesses born digital and digital-only materials. We are certainly part of the conversations. I think the e-books are the books and journals are sort of very different. In books, there are a lot of ongoing conversations around the ways that libraries can access books. And you may have seen there have been a couple of state-level lawsuits and rules around capping the costs for libraries to access often collections of books. Those are in different places in different states, but that method of accessing book material, and particularly the popular fiction, is an ongoing discussion, and one that we are still kind of wrestling with a little bit. When you think about the journal collections, the serials crisis has been with us for a long time now, a couple of decades, where the amount of research material that is being published and put out there continues to increase, which means the number of journals that are out there continues to increase, and the costs of those journals have for decades now been increasing beyond the rate of inflation, which means that even libraries like WashU that have done a good job of providing inflationary increases to the collections budget, you're still falling behind, and your capacity to collect books and monographs becomes challenged because you're spending all of your money to sort of chase the ever-increasing cost of journals. There's a lot of conversation, and I'm involved in some of these now. There's a lot of movement in the way journal publication is thought about, and there's the move to the transformative agreement, as it is sometimes known, or the read and publish agreement, as it is sometimes known, is coming on relatively quickly. And there are some moves at the federal level around, and coming from federal granting institutions, that are driving also some of the change in the move to what is these read and publish agreements. The idea behind the read and publish agreement is that right now, journal publishers are basically getting two streams of revenue from universities. The libraries are paying for subscription fees for access to journals, and then faculty and researchers who are paying what are known as APCs, author processing charges, author page charges, to have their material published in a way that published as open access and be made available immediately without any kind of delay and not behind a paywall for access to the material. This is something that a lot of funding agencies require. It can be very much seen as double dipping on the part of the publishers, and there's a real new move under transformative agreements to try to set up just a single interaction with the university. So we try to take the library subscription and have it cover not just the read fees, which is the library piece of it, but also the publish fees and these APCs that are coming from faculty. We haven't done a lot of that here at WashU, but we are definitely having conversations and thinking about how those kinds of agreements fit into our future and fit into our budget looking forward. And the way that we approach those kinds of agreements for journals is very much going to impact how we then approach access to books and ebooks and digital monographs and those kinds of things. And in all of them, then, we have this whole alternative publishing model out there, too. I do want to be very supportive of the idea of library publishing. We do run our own university repository. We offer people ways to make their research outputs accessible and available on alternative platforms. That always does raise the question that we talked about earlier of peer review and how peer review fits in, but there are ways to build peer review into some of those loops as well. Good. Another question at the top.
A couple months ago, it's a long story, so I'll just give you the shortened version of it. But a couple of months ago, I went online to research Washington University Library.
Okay.
And I was taken aback by the extent to which there are, I shouldn't have been, but the extent to which there are libraries under the university. And I'm curious to know, so for example, there's a library at the medical school, or there's a library within the law school. To what extent are those libraries open to the public, if at all?
So COVID changed some of this. It is interesting. You also need to think internally about some of the reporting lines on this. The library in the medical school is not part of my organization. The library in the law school is a collaborator with my organization. We have an operating MOU under which we work with them, but their budget comes from the law school. It's not part of my budget. And then the Brown School has their own library, which is also funded through the school, not through my budget. We collaborate effectively with all three of those partner libraries. We all ensure that materials are available through the same online catalog. We have methods for borrowing materials between the different libraries, which have been honed over years. But the public accessibility of those libraries does differ. Actually, most of them have some level of public accessibility. The med school less so, particularly post-COVID, because they have a lot more restrictions on access to the campus generally. The law school library is not accessible right now because during exam period they do lock down actually most of the law school buildings to ensure that they only have law students have room to spread out and space to study, but that's a temporary thing. Typically the law school library is open to the public during its regular opening hours. The Brown School Library is open to the public again during regular hours. You have to find it; it's up pretty high in that building. And then all of the departmental libraries that are part of my organization, which is the music library, the music library, the business school library, the art and architecture library, and the East Asia Library are all have some public accessibility. Very good. Well, thank you all again. This has been a really great conversation. And
You can take my notes now.
oh, yes.
I just want to thank Mimi on behalf of all of us for all the information. It's timely to talk about libraries for sure. We have a lot of work, good work to do. We want to give you a token of our appreciation. Of course, it's from our Bare Necessities shop because we're always talking about that. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank our education chair, Ike Martinez, and our vice chair, Katie Claggett, who's here for putting these programs together for us. And I want to let you know that our next program will be in January. It's Dr. Shantae Bolton, Executive Vice Chancellor for Administration and Chief Administrative Officer for Washington University. She'll be our keynote speaker at our annual Chancellor's Lecture. I know it will be very informative, and there's a light lunch to follow if you can join us. It'll also be live streamed as well as in person. It's Tuesday, January 24th, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. I also want to thank you again for coming today and look forward to seeing you in the new year. And I have to say happy holidays. I think it's time. So enjoy the holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you.